Hi, everyone. Welcome to today's WHIR webinar. I'm Liam Eagle. I'm the editor here at the Web Host Industry Review, and I will be moderating today's session, which is called Getting More Customers for Your Hosting Business. And that'll include a presentation by Todd Mitchell, who is GM of Dedicated Hosting and Global Services at The Planet, and John Whiteside, who is Marketing Manager at The Planet. Todd, of course, was presenting in our most recent webinar on developing the hosting business model back in May. I'll let Todd and John introduce themselves properly in a moment, and we will jump right into the presentation. But before that, I just want to do a little sort of housekeeping regarding the webinar itself. We're going to have some time at the end for a Q&A session. But you can feel free to use the webinar functions to submit questions throughout the presentation. I'll be keeping an eye on those questions, and if anything that's really pertinent to what is being said at the time pops up, I'll try to find a good polite moment to interrupt, and so we can try to keep things really engaged and interactive. Finally, we're going to have a record of all the questions submitted, so if you send one in and it doesn't get answered during the course of the session, you can expect to have these guys follow up with you after the fact, and we'll be putting some contact info up, in fact, later in the presentation. So if you want to sort of engage in a private discussion independent of the webinar, you can certainly do that too. And with that, I will turn things over to Todd, and he can get things started. Todd?
Good afternoon, Liam. Thank you very much for that intro. So as Liam mentioned, we're going to be talking about getting new customers for your business and customer acquisition and really all the different steps that you should take. So John and I have really spent a bit of time putting together this presentation for you guys. We hope that it's beneficial, and it's really step number 2 after we spoke about really the economies of your business and sort of business planning, which we discussed maybe 2 or 3 weeks ago on a similar webinar. In addition to that, we also have Louis Schrock with us. He's also responsible for channel marketing with us. So you'll hear 3 sort of voices in the background, and we'll just make sure that we remember to introduce ourselves before we speak. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn this over to John, and we can start going through the presentations. Yeah, sure. So really just a quick introduction. So let me speak about myself first, and then I'll let John talk about some of his history, and then we can get into the swing of things. So if you guys joined us previously, this will sound a little bit redundant, but my name's Todd Mitchell. I've been in web hosting for about 10 years now. Have a pretty good track record, first at Natural Disguise, running technical operations there. That was a company that did interactive media. So there was a lot of back-end web hosting needs, and that's really where I cut my teeth. Then moved over to Site 5 and ran that hosting company successfully for 5 years before it was acquired. And then I joined The Planet, and I've been here for about 3 years now. So I'm responsible for 4 businesses now within The Planet, our dedicated hosting business, our services businesses, as well as storage and data protection and co-location. So if you guys would like to talk about any of those, I'm certainly interested in doing so after the fact. So my email address and phone numbers there, I included my mobile number, so feel free to call that or text me anytime. And that's pretty much it for me. So John, how about you introduce yourself?
Hello everybody, this is John Whiteside. Like Todd, I've been in the hosting industry for 10 years. I'm at Interliant 10 years ago, and that was actually when Interliant had a shared hosting business along with managed hosting, and later at Navisite, and for the last couple of years here at The Planet. I'm responsible for marketing programs here, and some of the things we're going to talk about are the things that I do every day here at The Planet. In between some of those hosting experience, I also have done consulting to small and medium-sized businesses on marketing programs. I've also worked with businesses I imagine are similar in some ways to yours, getting these kinds of things set up.
Yep.
So looking forward to talking about it.
Great. So I'm going to handle just a couple of slides up front, and then I'll kick it over to John. So I used this slide in the previous webinar that we spoke together about, and really the first part of the first webinar was really to discuss sort of cost when you start to look at customer and you start to look at really just running an entire hosting company. And what I started to point out was a big portion of your expense is going to be equipment, right? So servers, networking gear, and what have you. That's really what the majority of that chart shows. Now, as you start to piece it apart and peel back the layers of where your expense is, really one of the second largest expenses is customer acquisition. And really what that means is, once you have all your infrastructure set up, how do you get customers in the door? How do you entice them? How do you target them? And how do you close them? And what you find is, depending on what business you're in, it can be a very small expense or it can be a very large expense. And it varies depending on the techniques and the strategies that you employ. And John will take you through some of those today on where you can sort of turn some of the knobs and pull some of the levers in order to help either reduce your customer acquisition cost, or how do you tune it appropriately so that you're getting more for the dollars that you're spending. The next slide is also something that I started to show in the last webinar, and we've expanded on it a little bit so that it sort of sets up customer acquisition and really why it's important to understand the economics behind customer acquisition. So we chose a very simple model here, which was taking a basic Dell server using a standard Xeon processor. This was Intel's first 4-core processor. And assuming you use a couple of 500 gig drives, RAID, some RAM, standard operating system and control panel, today you can pick that up for about $264 a month. And then, to continue the math, if you assume that you can get customer density of about 250 clients on that server at $5 a month, again, these are just made-up numbers as an example, it shows that you can get up to $1,250 in gross income, right? So that's all the revenue that you're going to bring in for that specific server, provided it remains fully loaded for the month. Now, you can take that $1,250, reduce the $264 that you're going to pay for the server, and your gross income is going to be $986 a month. Now, if that server is fully maxed out, you're going to see, the different tiers of revenue that you can get, whether it's maxed out or if you have sort of 50% capacity. Then, of course, take that number and multiply it by 12, and you get, yearly value for your clients. So these numbers are very important to keep in mind when you start to consider customer acquisition costs, because you don't want to go spend $200, $300, $400 for a client when you might only be bringing in, $50 or $100 from that client. So something to be very, very mindful of. And that is really sort of the foundation of a lot of what we're going to speak about today, which is know the economics of your business and then start to apply them with customer acquisition so that you're not underwater, so that you fully understand at what point you have break even. Maybe you want to overinvest in certain channels because customer acquisition is easier and they tend to be more sticky. Those are all the different levers you're going to have to consider for your business, right? We're speaking at a very generic and high level, and if you operate in the niche market, then some of these might be a little bit different than what we're speaking about today, but just something to keep in mind. So I'll turn it over to John, and we'll keep on going. Yeah.
So the marketing guy's on now because there's pictures. Thanks, Todd. And we're going to get back to that idea of the customer acquisition cost that you need to calculate a little later. But just to set up the next couple sections, there is a huge list of marketing programs you could get involved with and spend money on. And what we didn't want to do today was just kind of give you a laundry list and tell you to go look at that. So I thought, what are the things that you need to be thinking about, whether you're going to do these things yourself or hire someone to do them for you so you can be a smart client? That'll be the difference between a lot of activity in marketing and doing some things that will really make a difference for your business. So we're going to starting from that fundamental level. And the first one is pick your best customers. Now, what do we mean by that? There's an expression a friend of mine uses that I love, which is, focus is putting more wood behind fewer arrows, sticking to things you can do well. And now here's the reality for a web hosting business. There are some big, mass market brands out there that are well known, and then there's a lot of smaller operations, ranging from the tiny to the medium business size, which is where a lot of you are. Mm-hmm. It's really hard to go head-to-head with a gigantic national business. Ask any small store owner who's had a Walmart moving up the But what you can do is find places that those large businesses don't pay attention to. And for any smaller business, I think that's a really good place to start. Pick a group of people that you can reach, that have a reason to prefer you, and that you can serve in some way better than your competitor. So some examples of that would be geographic. You're in Indianapolis, target customers in Indianapolis. If you have experience in an industry, whether it's web design, software developers, or some non-technical business, if you really understand that business, that's a good group to target because you know how to talk to them. If you have specific technical abilities, that's the way to target a group of customers. What this does, as we'll talk about some more, is let you just get much more efficient with every marketing activity you do. And so an important note on this, I'm not telling you to say no to anybody who wants to come and give you business. This is just where do you put your energy in seeking out those customers. So once you've identified a group that you think is a good one for you to reach, or a couple of different groups, which may be the case, there's something that we call persona marketing, which I think is really, really valuable. You're getting business often from other businesses, but you're marketing to individuals, and you need to understand what's going to get them to engage with you and talk to you. A really good exercise to do early on is create a profile of that target customer you're talking to. And I mean not just how big is their business or what's its revenue, who are they? What are the challenges that person is facing who's going to decide to do business with you? What keeps them up at night because it's a problem? Where do they go look for information? What are the big topics in their industry that they're talking to their peers about? What's their measure of success? Is it growth? Is it sheer profit? Is it being more efficient? Finally, where do they spend time online? This, it seems almost like a silly little exercise. People go as far as giving these people names and drawing pictures of them. The value of it is, as you go on and start making decisions about your marketing programs, if you're not sure what to do or what the message is, this is something you can turn back to time and again. And it makes it very easy to figure out if you're on the right track. So it's a process I'd encourage you to go through. So you figured out who it is you're going to target with your hosting business. Strangely enough, I'm going to say start measuring now. And you may be saying, well, what are we measuring? We haven't started doing the marketing yet. But presumably you are right out of the gate going to set up your website to sell hosting. And you need to set a baseline of what's happening there now and start gathering data because this is critical to everything you do. And hosting is a service that is bought entirely or to a large extent, considered online. This is your revenue engine. And as obvious as it sounds, it's something that a lot of businesses don't pay much attention to. You need to understand how that works. Now, I'm sure everybody on this call is familiar with Google Analytics, very likely has it already installed on their site. The problem with Google Analytics, it's a great tool, is it gives you so much information that it can almost be paralyzing. And time and again we talk to people who say, yeah, I know all this stuff. Oh, what do I do with it? So I want to give you 6 things that really matter that you should be measuring today, forever, about your website. And you should start getting a baseline before you even spend money on marketing. Here we go. So 6 web measurements that absolutely matter. First one, this is really obvious, right? How many people are coming to your site? You want to break that down a little bit. Are we having, no worries. We're having slight technical issues, but we're going to press on here. How many people are coming to your site? How many visitors do you have? How many of them are unique visitors as opposed to repeat? How many new ones are you attracting? Okay, well, we'll do this really. We'll be glad to send this list out to everybody afterwards since we have a little build error in PowerPoint here. What do they do once they get to the site? You want to look at measures like bounce rate, how many people come to your site and then immediately turn around and leave because they were the wrong people or they saw the wrong thing. How many pages per visit are you going to get from everyone? That tells you how much they're engaging with your site. Most importantly, do they buy? You can go, if you haven't already, set up conversion paths that chart the course people will take through informational pages and through your shopping cart. And you can see step by step how many people reach each point, where do they leave, where are you losing people on the road to making a purchase. You want to look at how people got there. Very specifically, you want to see what search terms people are using, because that's going to inform some of the marketing programs you pay for later. You want to look at referral sites. Who's sending traffic your way? Are they people you should perhaps be partnering with or talking to? And there's a section in there called campaigns that will let you track very closely all of your paid activity. So it's really important to go get familiar with those parts of your web analytics and start watching them regularly. Finally, you want to look at who those people are. You can do a lot of drill down there into location if that's relevant to your business. Even if it's not your target, I'll tell you that it is, because it'll determine what kind of content you put out there. And you can get a lot of technical information that'll give you some real insight into who you're attracting to your site. It can be as simple as, browser OS screen resolution to help you design the site so that it works for them, to information you can infer from that. You can see what plugins are installed in browsers. You can see browser version. You can guarantee you that if you have a lot of people using IE6 versus a lot of people using Chrome, that's telling you something about the technical sophistication of your visitors and how you need to talk to them. So that's something you really want to dive into it and just kind of know. Oh, we were on the next slide, sorry. So you, once you have your baseline and your setup so that you're going to measure everything that happens on your site, you want to take a closer look at your website. And again, this is something everyone does a little, but very few people do enough. And you can really get ahead of competitors if you spend some time on this. All of us think that our sites are great and logical, and it's really, really easy to come in and do business with us. And we're all wrong, present company included. It's never as easy as we think. You need to look at it, and you need to test it. And this is from Fortune 500 corporations to small businesses, one of the most overlooked things in marketing. Start with that Google data. Sit there and look at those conversion paths. See what pages people are looking at. See what pages they're leaving your site from. That's all really good stuff, but I would encourage you to get someone to sit down in front of a computer and use your site and to sit quietly and unobtrusively as you can and just watch them. Because it's not as easy as you think. This is the way someone hands over money and signs up with you. You want to be able to see when they stare at the screen and wrinkle their brow and don't know what to do and hit the back button. And don't help them. Let them figure it out, because you're going to learn from that. Where are they getting stuck? You can never have a site that's too easy to use. If your mom is like my mom and would not be able to do this normally, should be able to order hosting from your site. At the same time, your nerdiest buddy out there who has a million technical questions should be able to get that from the site. You need to watch people use it. I just can't reinforce that enough. So apart from just the usability issues, which are critical if you're selling online, some basic points that you want to check on your site and make sure that they're ready before you spend money to get people there. Look at your homepage. Is it really clear who you are, and does it look like someone you would trust with your credit card number? And it's as simple as I can put it. It's amazing how many sites it's a little hard to tell. Not just are they a hosting provider? What kind of hosting? Is it shared hosting? Is it dedicated hosting? What are they selling? That should be really clear, so when a visitor gets to that site after searching for you or being referred to you, in that second or two you have, they say, okay, this is what I need. Service descriptions should be incredibly easy to find and have the right details that people need to decide to stick with you. Again, this is something that you may have felt like the page you put them on, it's great, but people may not be getting to that. So once again, look at where they are and how easy it is to get to them, and make sure that that's crisp. Your ordering process. Again, is it really obvious on every page how to buy? I mean, it may seem a little over the top to just have big buy now buttons, but it's a lot better than having someone sitting there saying, okay, I want this, but now what do I do? Are you giving enough details? Are all the specs of the plan there? If someone needs to go get a question answered, like, well, will I be able to install this software? Will I be able to do X, Y, and Z? Is it easy for them to get the answers? And finally, is it always clear what's going to happen next? And the best example of this is just the best practice on your site I can give you is Amazon, where when you're about to place an order, they'll tell you, you put in your credit card. On the next page, you will get to review this. So you don't have to feel the least bit nervous about clicking that next button. You want everyone to feel safe through this. Then finally, I'm talking mainly about getting new customers, but you're going to have a growing existing customer base. Another thing to check on the site is, can you get help? If I'm an existing customer and I get in there, is it very obvious how I'm going to get support? You'll need that to keep those customers so they don't just churn away. It's also something your new or considering customers will look at. Like, when I need help, can I just come here and click yes? So just some key points to make sure you look at. Just kind of reiterating this piece of it. You want to find out where people are leaking off the site because that's money out the door. Where do they leave the conversion path? What's confusing? What questions aren't you answering? What forms are hard to fill out? And finally, just once you've tested this, and I guarantee you will find some improvements to make in the site, do it all again a month or two down the line. It should just be part of your process. Pardon me. Dry throat here. Next slide. So finally, we get to the meatier part, which is after you've gone through these things, finally, it's time to start advertising. And that old phrase, the best things in life are free. I don't know if they're always the best things, but they're certainly the first things I would recommend that you do are free, with a big asterisk, because nothing's free. Your time is worth money. So I'm going to run through some things that I'm sure you're familiar with and give a few specific points. And the message here is, do these basic search and social networking things. Don't spend huge amounts of time on them, because you can do some basic stuff that puts you ahead of 90% of every other site that's out there, because most people don't do it. So number one there is search engine basics. And we all know, that we want to have good search results, and there are a million different opinions about the right way to get those search results. There are a few things that everybody agrees on. One is that you need to sit down and think about what the right keywords are for your business, so you have something you're aiming toward as you work on your site. Number two is just check some very basic things that are important to search engines. The titles of your pages, that appear up at the top there. Those are a big index item. All the tags on your pages, the meta tags, the alt tags on images, and your page copy. Use your phrases in a natural way. Don't overdo it. We still see a lot of sites that just have, every page has the exact same title, and it doesn't really describe what the site's about. That stuff will kill you. You will find SEO people out there who say this is much less important now, which, Google doesn't tell us all exactly how it works, because, then we'd all be number one, and I don't know how that would work. But there clearly is some importance, so it's some basic stuff you want to take care of. Once you do some simple things, let's face it, search is Google by like a 20-to-1 ratio. So you want to design your site to be search-friendly according to Google. There is a great tool out there that anyone managing their site themselves should go look at, Google Webmaster Tools. It'll give you a bunch of great stuff. Some things you can do to make sure that they are indexing you properly, like submitting your sitemap. You get a lot of information there on what they will tell you are the best practices for building a site that they'll index properly. And then finally, there's just a lot of reports that will give you some insight into how your site is performing on different search terms, what other search terms are related to the ones that you're doing well at, what the search volume is on those terms, so you can get a sense of how many people are out there looking. Great place to go start, spiffing your site up a bit to push yourself up higher in the search rankings. One thing underpinning this, though, that I always remind people is the absolute best thing for SEO is good content. If you put useful information up there that people read and people want to link to, that is going to help your search results. Don't be stingy with it. Put tips about how to sign up, choose a web host, how to manage your hosting. Put information about the business of your customers up there. Supply white papers. Put your FAQs there. One thing that we do, and I really encourage anyone else to do, is put as much of your knowledge base, if you've got one, as you can out where anyone can get it without signing in, because it's search engine gold and will build your reputation as an expert and those results. So don't be stingy with information. The other thing is that you want to focus on your site to some degree, but you really need to think beyond it. As we all know now, people look at content at a lot of places that aren't our websites and spend a lot of their day there. You want to put your content there. Some very obvious things you can do. You probably have a blog. If not, you should, just because it's a steady source of fresh content, even though it can sometimes be a pain in the neck to keep writing posts for it. It's worth doing. Put that stuff on Facebook. Tweet about it. Tweet interesting industry news. Tweet when you have a new announcement. If you have any good video content, and that frankly can be as simple as, hey, here's a tour of our office, or here's one of our experts talking about a topic you want to know about, put that on YouTube. Set up a YouTube channel for yourself. You can then see how many people are viewing it and put links back to your own site. Great stuff for your search results, great ways to engage customers, and all no cost but your time. Directory listings are very good too in that way. There are a lot of local directories or industry-specific directories you should look at. Many are free. Paid directories can be useful. Obviously, since you're going to spend money, you want to be a little more selective and just kind of verify it's a high-quality site, because that will give you more search benefit, and that it's the amount of traffic you anticipate is worth the money you're going to pay. Final thing, kind of beyond the site, build your search, build your reputation item, is you just want to participate in online communities as much as your time allows. Go back to that persona of your customer. Think about where that person spends time and looks for information, and go participate there. Become a known face there. That will bring people to your site, because you can generally have a profile that will link. Will also build your reputation as just a trustworthy, knowledgeable person who, of course, you want to talk to when you need hosting. Key to that is don't spam. You don't want to be the person who's always offering a hosting coupon. You want to be the one who's contributing to whatever the topics are in those communities. Another really big tip, and this is like beyond whether you are local in your focus, with the segment you picked to focus on or not, is you always want to think local. It's much easier to reach 100,000 people who are near you than 100 million who are scattered around. And more importantly, search engines and directories will reward local businesses. It's been a really big move with Google in particular, although all the search engines are doing it compared to a few years ago, where not only have they added a lot of tools, which I'm sure you've all seen, you do a search, you get the local results with the map and all that. Good tools for users. They've heavily rewarded good local content in search results, and in paid search, which we'll talk about in a minute. There's actually a portal within Google where you can go, make sure you are listed in your local listings. Little thing that gets missed, include your local address in the footer of your site. That otherwise Google Local won't believe you're local. But you will very quickly get preferred placement for local searches, and you'll just get better results. When Google sees people coming in an IP address from your region. So there's just a sheer traffic benefit, and then obviously, if your scope for your business is local, you're going to want to really focus that with terms and whatnot, because those are your customers. So after those basics, we're actually going to talk about spending some money, because we marketing people like to do that. And the reason this is coming at the tail end here is just that you've got to get these basics right so you don't throw money away. So if you've gone through all the steps we've talked about, you know who your customer is and where to find them. Your site is tuned up. It's ready for you to take in business really easily. You're building your name for some of these other search and social activities. You're watching your site with web analytics, so you're going to know exactly what happens as you start bringing people in, whether it's working. You know what search terms are going to bring people in. You know what content on your site they've been responding to. And going back to what Todd talked about, you know how much you can afford to spend. So I'd say it's time to spend some money. And the easiest place to start when you're ready to do this is on paid search. And I focused most of this section on paid search just because I think it's the best fit for a hosting business, although not the only. And it's also, frankly, the most deceptively easy thing. It's really easy to set it up. It's really easy to spend a lot of the money and not get much if you make some basic mistakes with it. So I want to dive into this one a little bit more deeply. Your number one success factor is keywords. And you'll probably have already done this, thinking about your search optimization. It's time to start thinking about it a little harder if you're going to start spending money for search. So you want to find the terms that people are already using to come to your site. Google has some tools within the Google paid search interface to suggest things for you. I'd encourage you to really think about longer terms because people search on 3, 4, 5-word phrases, and they're very cost-effective and targeted. So come up with your list from there. And when you've set up your account in Google AdWords and you're getting things set up, you load those up. You're going to organize them, which we'll talk about in a minute. You also want to spend some time writing ads. And my recommendation for this is kind of do it at night away from the computer and brainstorm a bit because it's not as easy as you think. Basic pointers. Always have multiple ads for every set of keywords you're advertising on. You want to test, you want to see what's working. Repeat search phrases in the ads. This is just time and again shows people are more likely to click. If I search on web hosting companies in Pensacola and I see Pensacola web hosting, I want to click that ad. Always make an offer. Don't just describe what you've got, but say, come see plans today. Click for special coupon. It's something to say, hey, take action and come look at me. That will boost your response. And again, this may seem really obvious, but go proofread those ads before you put them all live. I mean, not that I've ever made this mistake myself. Todd is laughing here because he's seen some of them in action. It's really easy when you do these to make some mistakes, and I see them when I do Google searches, so do stop and proofread before you spend your money. Side note, you may want to sponsor a term like web HSOTING because people are typing it, although Google sort of pulled the rug out from under that market a bit by suggesting the correct spelling often. And that used to be a good way to get some cheap traffic. Finally, organization is key here. And, I could talk to you for an hour about all the different ways of organizing search campaigns, and you'd probably pass out listening to me. But there's a couple key concepts that you really got to get or you'll burn up money. You want to separate everything you do into match types. And there's exact and broad match. And what that just means is there's the person who types shared web hosting, say, and they will only see your ad if you are sponsoring shared web hosting. And if they type anything but that, you won't appear. Broad match is you buy the keyword web hosting, and you get every people who type, web hosting Linux, web hosting for dog trainers, free web hosting, which you probably don't want. There's value to doing both. They're worth different amounts. If you have a 5-word search phrase and somebody types that in and it exactly describes you, you want to be there, and you should pay more for that than if they had the word hosting somewhere in their search. Or you may not want to pay at all, and you may want to do some negative keywords to suppress ads. The other piece of paid search is a content network, which is all those Google ads you see on sites all over the place. A lot of value, worth much less, so you want to separate these things into different campaigns and manage them differently. I'll just give you an example in our own search campaigns here at the Planet. What we will pay for a good solid term versus content network is like 10 to 20 times difference, more for the exact terms. and we manage that really closely. If we didn't do that, we'd pay a lot of money for some really bad stuff. So, if you really sit down and think about organizing it, maybe get some help from an expert if needed, you will save yourself a lot of money. Some other tips for doing paid search. Once again, local targeting. If your target market is local, this is kind of a no-brainer because you don't want to show your ads to people who are outside your market. But even if it's not, I mean, we sell internationally here, and we do local campaigns simply because they work really well. Google favors them. We'll often see 5-6 times the response rate, or just the click-through rate on something because it's local versus national, and at a lower cost. So this is something to do, and you should do, and you should experiment with whether you're local in your focus or not. It's also, frankly, an argument for being local in your focus. Your position on the page. Everyone immediately wants to be the #1 ad because that gets the most clicks, which is true. The reality is it doesn't get that many more clicks than the #2 ad or the #3 ad. You really want to, it's good to experiment with getting yourself farther up the page by paying more, but keep an eye on what you get because there's a point where you're just paying more for no more customers. You don't want to do that. Landing pages, which is the marketing word for a page that you create just for one source of traffic. You don't want to point all these ads at your home page in most cases because you're giving some specific messaging, maybe about a particular hosting plan or price point. Send people to a page that reiterates what they just saw in the app. They're much more likely to stay on your site and then head towards making a purchase. You can go to the extreme of having practically a different landing page for every keyword. I think that's probably not a good use of your time. But if conceptually you have your starter plan landing page, your Linux plan landing page, whatever is logical for the way you're advertising, that will really help your conversion a lot by people just having a comfort level that I clicked in the right place, this is what I'm looking for, let me press on. In Google, you can see all of your clicks, what you're paying for them. More importantly, you will see conversions. And a common error people make is get really excited about getting a lot of traffic to their site. And there may be cases where your goal is just traffic, but I don't think that's going to be the case for most of you. You want people to sign up with you. So you want to make sure you've properly tagged your site, and Google has lots of help on this to make it very easy. So you can track a conversion back to an ad and a search term and optimize for those. Google will actually have some tools that will do that for you and automatically do some optimizing. You still want to keep an eye on it because automated tools can sometimes do strange things. But the key message there is, click costs you money. The conversion will make money for you, so just always keep your eye on that. And the final thing with paid search is, again, I think it has this real reputation for being the thing that's easy to start and you can turn it up and turn it down like a volume knob. It's true compared to some other marketing programs, but it's not really true for a couple of reasons. One is that Google looks at quality. So when you are a new advertiser, you're essentially penalized for being new until some traffic comes through your ads and hits your site. And as that happens, and presuming that does happen, Google will start to improve your quality score. They'll look at things too like, does the page on the other end of that ad match what's being said in the ad? Another good reason for landing pages. As more traffic goes through, what they call a quality score for your ad will improve. You will pay less for the same clicks, and you will be higher up the page. In some cases, if you have some strong competitors, you may not be able to get to a high position on the page no matter how much you spend, until you've just made sure your ads are solid and your site is good and people are coming through there. So you need to be patient. If you start this and you wait 3 days, you will almost certainly be disappointed, and you will almost certainly not be at the acquisition cost that you're targeting. It will take some time to get there. Frankly, I would allow 2 to 3 months before things are really humming. That said, look at the trend. It's one thing to say, you know what, we're at a too high cost, but there's all kinds of like improving ads and improving bids we can do to get better. That's fine. If you're not getting anywhere with it or it's going the wrong way, then you do need to think about turning it off. So, don't just wait 3 months and watch money go out the door, but don't expect it to be perfect on day one. You really cannot just set this and forget it. If you get to a point with paid search where you can look and see it's bringing the ROI, it's bringing a stream of customers, it's all good, don't say that's great and not worry about it for a month, or you're going to come back in a month and discover you spent a whole lot of money and you've been outbid on things and you dropped down the page and it's all kind of, gone south. So it's something that you need to watch regularly, probably weekly in most cases would be a minimum. And if you don't have time to do that, which is legitimate, it's one of the things you want to think about possibly paying someone to do for you. So paid search, of course, is not the only kind of advertising there is. It's the one I focus on the most because I think it's a really good fit for hosting buyers, and it covers a whole range of kind of tire kickers onto ready-to-purchase types. But it's not the only thing out there. You have probably at some point thought of things like banners on websites. You may have thought about or someone has tried to sell you things like print, radio even, that sort of thing. All of which are good advertising media with their place. I haven't put much detail in here on, although if there are questions, we can certainly dive into it. Mainly because they're harder to measure. I don't think they match the hosting buying process as much. Some other industries may be better. And there's just frankly a higher entry cost. You can do all the social and SEO on your own, or with one trusted person to help you. You can set up paid search, very low cost. But you have to create banners, you have to create print ads, you have to do radio spots, all that kind of thing. So I think it's definitely a tier 2 for most people. That said, you're going to measure it the same way. Just keep that cost of acquisition that you calculated in mind, and always do the math, even if it's on the back of an envelope. Like, how many people will I get? How many people will really come to me? And if it doesn't work, the numbers don't work, just don't do it. Now that said, that's where I would have stopped at that a few years ago, but Google, in their quest to kind of make everything easier and more efficient, has actually gotten into all of these media in a big way. So if you do want to start kind of playing with some numbers and saying, what would this cost and what could I reach, within the Google search interface, there are tools to place display ads and actually to create and place radio and television spots. It's pretty cool. And it's especially cool because if you just want to say, okay, I want to get this audience in the Los Angeles area during these times of day, could I really do that? You can actually go and see what some costs would be, and if you decide to do it, they give you some tools to have like, an 800 number that will forward to you, and then also ping your Google Analytics to tell you someone used it. So there's some very neat stuff up there. Some of those broadcast media can actually be quite useful if you're in a small to medium-sized metro area. So don't rule them out, but I don't think they're going to be your top priority, and certainly not until you have some money to put into the just entry cost to make it work. It's kind of more than I'd intended to say about it. So these have been kind of my thoughts on it. If you have the time and inclination to learn more, there are actually some really great small business marketing sites out there where you learn lots of good stuff in a really short time. And these are ones that are really aimed at people who are, marketers 24/7. So, and this is a completely idiosyncratic list, by the way. I read and listen to all these things. I like them, one man's opinion. Marketing Over Coffee is actually a podcast. 20 minutes a week, 2 guys sitting in a Dunkin' Donuts outside of Boston talking about online marketing. I always am jotting something down I want to go check out from this, and it's very geared to kind of do-it-yourself, starting up, building your business type, so it's a good listen. Duct tape marketing is something that's along those lines. Really trying to put a system around lots of these marketing activities can be quite useful. If you're interested in digging into your web analytics and what Google is telling you, Occam's Razor is a blog that goes way into that. The author works for Google, helps develop this stuff. has an incredibly deep understanding of it. If you like it, it's fascinating. If you don't, it's kind of mind-boggling. So if that's your interest, check that out. Search Engine Land is a site I really recommend if you're staying involved in your own search activities. Way more than anyone can actually read in one day, but tons of headlines. So this is where just scanning the headlines in it, you're going to find out, oh, Google is making a big change to how paid search works, or everyone is saying there's this new algorithm, which means if you do the following 3 things to your website, you're going to do much better in search. It's really good nuggets like that, so it's worth skimming through if you don't have time to read it, as I often do. So just to kind of reiterate a couple of things, none of this is really set it and forget it stuff. One of the things we talked about when we were preparing this was whether we wanted to say, okay, here's the stuff you do yourself, and here's the stuff you should go pay someone to do. You're all different, so there's no absolute answer to this, but I will say this. You need to really own understanding what your customer segment is and that persona, because that's your lifeblood. That should be close to your heart all the time. I think you need to have a really good understanding of what's happening on your website, and if there's enough complexity there, that means paying someone to do the interpretation for you. That's legit, but you really should just know that inside out. As you get beyond that, I mean, obviously, this is your business, and you want to really know what's up with all this, and you want to be able to ask the right questions, which I hope would encourage you to start doing. But as you go farther along through the order of things we've presented, it's stuff that your time may well be better spent, doing other things and paying, someone who lives paid search 24 hours a day to go do all the fine-tuning and so on. All of this is testing and optimization. You can always do better than you are today. If you ever feel like I've gotten my site perfect and my ads perfect, and I'm going to go to Bermuda for 3 months and watch the money roll in, you're probably deluded, and if you're not, please call me and tell me what you did, because I'd like to copy it. Doesn't happen. Your customers will change. Their expectations will change. And once you're up and running, if you can improve the yield from your website 5%, you're making 5% more money by doing nothing else that you have to write a check for. It's good stuff. And you need to do this because it changes. The web changes, expectations change, so this is going to be an ongoing activity. And not on the slide, but finally, don't forget the cost of acquisition. That's the difference between a profitable business and doing a lot of marketing and wondering why you're not getting any richer off it. So just, never forget that. And basically, I've just given the quick review that we're bringing up. I've got ahead of the slides here. So I hope that was helpful in giving you some ways to think about where you want to start with all this. And I know we're going to go take questions now. I just encourage you to please reach out to either Todd or myself afterwards if you want to follow up with any other questions.
Hey guys, I wanted to interject here and sort of answer a question that has been coming up a lot, which is that will people be able to get a copy of the presentation after the fact? And I wanted to say that there will definitely be a archived video copy of the webinar audio and the slides on the WHIR site, and I believe on the Planet site too.
Yeah, we're going to do a blog post, so it will also be available at blog.theplanet.com.
Okay, and there will be, I assume that if people want to get a hold of the slides, they can probably email you guys?
Yeah, absolutely.
Sure. Yeah, happy to send that out.
Okay, so that answers one of the more popular questions. Can I get a copy of the presentation? Are you guys ready to jump to sort of some Q&A type stuff right now?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so I just wanted to remind everyone that you can submit questions via the webinar functions, and that if we don't get to your question, there will be a copy of it saved, so people will follow up afterwards via email or something like that. And also just that if you want to contact these guys directly, their info is on the screen. So something that came up for me during the presentation, I guess, John, while you were talking about the sort of creating a customer profile, I kind of was thinking the other way. Is there a kind of customer that you as a hosting provider do not want? I know there are a lot of customers out there who are always ready to jump to the cheapest thing they can find and stuff like that. Is there a way to sort of purposely avoid attracting less than ideal customers?
Well, yeah, I mean, there are a lot of ways. Well, first part, yes, there are customers you do want to avoid, and that would be, you know, the incredibly high support cost customer, the one who will leave because someone else is a buck cheaper. You know, those aren't people you want. To avoid them, it's tough because, you know, difficult customers don't tend to present themselves as difficult customers. That said, though, but this gets to a really good point about picking your segment. I mean, I think you can minimize that to some degree. Like, if you're going to pick an industry that you focus on because you know about it, you do need to do a little reality check there. One thing is their website important to them? You know, if the website is not central to their business, they're never going to be the most loyal customer because you're always this other thing they do. Another is, where is that business going, or that industry going? You know, if it's, you know, the guy who repairs buggy whips, money's not coming in the door there, and you're going to get squeezed for money. You'd rather pick an industry that's growing, that's doing well, and, you know, there are those that are level or doing okay even in the current economy. So you can look for some maybe industry characteristics of, you know, these are people with a certain level of technical expertise that gives them a good understanding of what it's going to be like to be my customer, and they make money. That said, you know, the other issue is that this is different. So maybe you're going to design your business and your site and everything to appeal to the completely unsophisticated customer. If you can do that well and make money, you have a real advantage, frankly. So the customer that's difficult for me because they don't understand any of the technology might be ideal for you.
Okay. Now I've got somebody here, this is a pretty quick one, but they wanted to know what the source was for the cost breakdown that, Todd, that you showed at the beginning, and I believe from the last presentation that was based on a sort of a typical hosting provider that uses dedicated servers from the planet. I could be mistaken.
Yeah, it was just a very generic model. So, you know, we've taken, you know, some information that we know from our clients, we've taken some information from analysts, sort of put it into a blender, and then, you know, sort of pushed it out the other side and made it look good. You know, that model is going to vary dramatically depending on who your providers are, where you're based, what your tax rate is, whether or not you own your gear or you're renting it. There's so many variables there. So the idea behind it was simply to illustrate that, hey, it's not just one cost. It's not just the cost of the server and the cost of customer acquisition, but there's really, you know, 10 or 15 things that go into the recipe, and you have to be mindful of all of them. And then once you're mindful of all of them and you have a clear picture of how they break down, where's your competitive advantage? Or do you even have a competitive advantage, and do you have to maybe concentrate on something else other than cost? So it was really solely from an illustrative standpoint because it varies widely depending on, you know, all the things I mentioned.
Okay. Now we have a question here about, this person gives a lot of specific detail about their business, but I think the real nut of the question is, well, I'll say they want to target WordPress users who need hosting, and they want to know what a good strategy would be for sort of enticing people to pay a premium versus the cheapest shared hosting possible. And I guess that could really be applied across the board. Any kind of hosting provider wants to. How do you encourage people to pay a premium for your services when there's somebody else doing it cheaper?
Well, I mean, the expertise, if you have the expertise to deliver, then, you know, that becomes one of your selling points, that, you know, we understand WordPress. If you can on your site provide customer testimonials, provide a, you know, WordPress-related knowledge base, or whatever particular, you know, use case you're talking about, that will help convince people. It's just sort of funny because in my personal life, I went through a lot of difficulty finding a good place to host a WordPress blog because some hosts are better than others, and I do pay a bit of a premium. So I think that person maybe is going to email me now. We'll get set up, and I'll probably pay. You want to validate. I mean, people will pay more if you make their life easier. And if you can show on your site how you do that, that's helpful. sort of chicken and egg. If you have customers you can get quotes from, and maybe you do an incentive to get your customers to send you a note with why they love you, you know, $5 off, whatever. That's one way to do it. If you're starting up and you don't have customers yet, show them your knowledge. Have a blog about, you know, how to tune WordPress to do exactly what you want that's clearly sponsored by you. You know, WordPress 3 just came out, so, you know, be out there tweeting about the cool new features you're finding in it. If you build that expertise, you will get, people will gravitate to you.
Okay, I have a question here about whether event sponsorships work well as an advertising mechanism.
Depending on the event. Isn't that great? That's just a weasel answer. Sorry, I didn't mean that to come out that way. You have to look at the event. Yes, they can. What you want to do if you're looking at an event is talk to the organizer and just find out what you can about who is going to be there. And what are they going to be doing while they're there, and what is your sponsorship involved? So, you know, if you're thinking of a typical trade show sort of thing, those can be really excellent, especially small local events, because it's inexpensive to do them. It's not a whole lot of time and travel. And if the audience is great, you know, there's nothing like face-to-face discussion. And this is sort of the answer you're going to get with a lot of marketing programs. Like, the concept of an event is excellent. Make sure that you're going to have the right people there. You know, that's a small-scale version of what we do with trade shows. The other thing is with events, though, is you can often negotiate a little bit about what you get. So if you're feeling like maybe it's a little anemic what is in the package, you know, go and ask. Say, that's great, but, you know, can I have bigger banners and, you know, hand out my mug with my logo to everybody who walks in the door, or, you know, whatever it is that will get you more exposure. The other helpful thing is find a way to collect information and follow up promptly with people with some kind of useful touching base so you get the most benefit out of it.
Okay, a question here about, I guess, for the sake of comparison, do you guys have a guess as to what the cost of acquisition for shared hosting at a company like DreamHost or GoDaddy might be?
I mean, that's going to vary so heavily. I mean, if you consider GoDaddy's marketing campaigns, specifically their television spots, you know, they're spending millions of dollars a year to attract clients. But on the flip side, they just don't sell you domains. They also try and upsell you a lot of things under the sun. So, you know, they're making up a lot of dollars and a lot of margin with the add-on services. So you also have to consider that as well.
Yeah, there's a whole area that you could go into, and, you know, perhaps in the future, you know, once you have a customer, how do you get more revenue from that customer? And GoDaddy is a good example of aggressively doing that. So no, I don't. You know, I would be hesitant to hazard a guess. I will observe that, you know, GoDaddy, DreamHost, etc., are one of the reasons that if you are selling hosting, you need to be very careful with things like pay-per-click advertising, because it's very competitive. And in fact, we have to do that even though we're selling a different kind of hosting that they are. That kind of mass market consumer-like competition has made some of it quite expensive. I mean, you know, so we talked about finding niches. We do that too. So. That said, based on their pricing, it can't be more than $1,000.
Okay, I didn't quite hear what you said there.
That last bit?
Just the price.
So after all that, we don't know. Given the pricing, it can't be more than a few dollars.
A few dollars. Okay. We're at just after 3 o'clock. Do you guys want to wrap this up?
We can stay a few minutes.
Yeah, if you've got a question or two more, we could hang out a couple.
Well, we're done all the attendee questions. Actually, we've got through everything everyone asked. I have a couple questions of my own. I could throw your way if you've got a couple more minutes. Okay, so one thing I thought was really good was, or really interesting was, the notion of selling hosting as, you know, quote unquote web hosting, in terms of there's obviously a point at which it gets to be too jargony for certain customers, but I feel like there's an argument for the idea that small businesses or not really tech-savvy customers don't necessarily know that they want quote-unquote web hosting, let alone, you know, shared hosting or any of the various flavors of hosting that are out there. Is there a more basic set of terms that are more proven in terms of their ability to resonate with certain customers? Like I know everyone knows what a website is or knows that they want a website. Is there tactics around that you guys, feel?
Well, I think first of all, you're right that those terms don't work for everyone, and particularly as you get to less technical buyers. I think you need to go back to that buyer persona and say, well, what would that person call it? I think your point about using website, like get a website versus get web hosting, is a really good example of that. As far as other terms we see people use,
I mean, the only other thing that I could think of is things that are associated with web hosting, which is website, maybe blog, maybe domains. So, sort of, I guess, go up a level. So get away from sort of web hosting, which is the infrastructure, and think more of what they're actually going to do with it, and then target those words.
Now, you see a lot of things out. I mean, if you think about some services that are out there, they really are just hosting, whether it's WordPress.com, hosting blogs, and they talk about what you're doing with them. So that's even abstracted, maybe another level away from that. The other thing that you can think about is if you're adding some services on top of the hosting, like if your forte is that you set up sites with a shopping cart pre-installed and all that, if you're not selling web hosting, you're selling your online store, your storefront. So it's one of those cases where go get yourself into the customer's head and see what they think, see what they call it when they come in and ask. Any opportunities, I didn't talk about this in the presentation, it's really good to, as much as you can, sort of save and record those customer interactions and go back and read them. I mean, for example, here at the Planet, we do a lot of online chat with our representatives, and if you have a chat system where you're getting emails or however you're doing it, boy, go back and look at that. It's amazing what you will learn about what your customers are calling your services. So, great source of info there.
Okay, I got another attendee question here. Is there a strategic difference in promoting a VPS or cloud-based hosting solution versus sort of standard hardware-based hosting? And are there pros and cons to each?
I'll take that. This is Todd. So I think that they are different types of hosting. So one of the trends that we're starting to see, and we think it will become a little bit more prolific as we get down the tracks a little bit further, is that there's a certain abstraction that cloud brings to purchasing hosting that separates it from dedicated hosting. What I mean by that is, the way that people buy dedicated hosting today, or even shared hosting for that matter, it's very technical, it's very speeds and feeds driven. If they're asking for specific processors, specific amounts of RAM, storage, and items like that, and there's really sort of a single point of failure, which is the server itself and then the individual components within. As you start to look at cloud, and VPS was really the gateway to cloud because cloud's all based on virtualization. So as virtualization matured, it paved the way for cloud. What you start to see is the way in which people are marketing cloud is different than dedicated or shared hosting, and the fact that they're starting to promote the benefits of uptime. So they're selling more of a service that's abstracted from the hardware layer. So they're saying, easy to use, guaranteed 100% uptime, ability to scale up and scale down, and you have utility billing, so you're only charged for what you use. And it's a very different message from, this processor, this amount of RAM, this amount of disk, and it's, $100 a month. So you start to see that difference. And then, once you understand that you're selling a service, so the VPS or the cloud stuff, then you have to start thinking about where you can have competitive advantages. There's a lot of entrants in the cloud and virtualization space now, just because it's hot and it's very hyped right now. You have to start to figure out how you're going to be different and how to separate from the pack, and what's your value proposition over and above your competitors. It's an issue that's in shared and dedicated hosting today, and it's only going to become more prevalent in cloud and VPS hosting as those services start to become more mature. So figure out how you want to differentiate from your competitors, and then double down on that, and that's the best way.
Okay, I think that might be a very good note to wrap things up on.
Very good.
Okay, I just wanted to, extend our thanks to everyone who attended, and thanks for submitting some great questions. Of course, I'd like to thank John and Todd for delivering a great presentation. Before we go, I want to remind everyone that, there will be an archive of the webinar available sometime next week up on the WHIR.com/webinar, along with all of our past webinars, including our previous one with the planet. And also you can look at blog.theplanet.com. Is that right, guys?
That's exactly right.
Okay, great. Well, thanks everyone for coming, and have a great day.